Hey, SAS listeners, welcome back to another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Coming to you from the Long Valley studio in Washington, Utah, I'm your host, Dave Markel, and this is episode 199. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you joining me. This podcast exists to give survivors a place to tell their stories in their own words while helping all of us better understand trauma, healing, and resilience. Although these conversations often involve difficult subject matter, they are ultimately stories of hope and healing. This week's guest is Hannah King, and today's conversation is the first installment of a three-part series. Some stories simply can't be told in a single episode, and Hannah's is one of them. Several months ago, while traveling outside the United States, Hannah was drugged and violently sexually assaulted. In the aftermath, she faced challenges that reached far beyond the assault itself. Trauma affects the mind, the body, relationships, identity, and the ability to imagine the future. In this episode, Hannah begins sharing that journey with remarkable honesty. As always, please take care of yourself while listening. If you need to pause and come back later, that's okay. Here's Hannah. Hannah, welcome. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Hannah reached out to me a few months ago, and we're finally able to connect. Why don't you tell us about yourself, give us some background before we get into your story, and let us know who you are and what you do.
I'm Hannah. I'm really happy to be here. I live in Maui, Hawaii. I am a mama of two amazing humans. I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. I am currently unemployed because of what happened to me. I have owned my own business for the last many years, over a decade now. Primarily, I work with female entrepreneurs, but women in general. It used to start as working focused on their business, but it's really deep internal work. I'm a spiritual teacher, business coach. I help people with the mental, emotional, energetic of creating lives and businesses that they really love and they're passionate about.
That's awesome. It's really a sad state of affairs that you've had to take a break from that based on the experience that you had. How many months ago has that been?
We are just past 8 months. Actually, it's funny because I don't feel like I even really explained what I do very well. Typically, I could say that really simply. It's actually funny, I haven't said that to anybody in a little while. It almost feels like I don't even know how to say it because I feel so disconnected from it. But I can't ethically support other people when I'm in acute healing from trauma and something so extreme. And so I've been running my business for many years. I have passive products. I have ways that people can receive things from me without me being physically there. I didn't even have the energy or the ability to show up in that way. The universe has an interesting way of presenting things to you because I would say if had this happened at maybe a different time earlier in my business, I would have been able to take the back seat. I had been working on restructuring and there was a lot of things that were starting to feel misaligned and I was starting to strip away at what I had been doing, certain elements of my business to rebuild again in a way that felt more aligned for where I was at that time, which was late last year, or it was really for 2025. So I had been in this breakdown to rebuild kind of stage. Because of that, my business was pretty lean at the time. I think that for whatever reason, I needed to be fully stripped of absolutely everything, but to have to lose 100% of my income as well, because to me, it didn't feel ethical or appropriate to serve people. The majority of my income at that time was just working with one-on-one clients. And that is very intimate and requires a lot of me. And the work that I do requires me to be grounded and in my body and present. And I was not at all. And so I had to tell all of my clients at that time, I had to take a pause.
And I'll let my audience know that Hannah and I have talked on a couple of occasions. So I know her story. I know what she's in the midst of based on what happened. And it was devastating. It was impactful to her core, as are all rapes and sexual assaults. Hannah's happened to be extremely violent and ongoing for quite some time. And I think the impact from that is very understandable. And it's going to be a while. I understand that, for you to regain your footing. And it's pretty unusual for me to even allow for the concept of someone to tell their story as soon after their situation has occurred, as I am with Hannah. But it's important for me to allow her to do this because I think it's part of that healing process that she needs and that other listeners may need to hear. And also to get the word out that recovery is possible to the extent that someone can tell their story and be courageous and strong enough to do that, even though it's not been all that long since this incident has passed. And I don't want to say this incident other than to say that, as I mentioned, it did occur over quite a bit of time. Hannah, could you tell the audience, though, how you found the podcast and what then inspired you to reach out to me?
I found you because I went hunting for things that I could listen to that I could relate to. The first book that I read after the assault was Know Her Name by Chanel Miller.
Right.
And although our stories are very different, there was things that she said that felt so helpful because it put language and words to things that I was feeling because I was so dissociated and I was so confused and disconnected. I was still putting pieces back together as to what actually happened to me. And to be clear, I'm not like extensively trauma educated, but I have quite a bit of knowledge and education around trauma prior to all of this. I've worked with a lot of people. I've had plenty of clients that have come to me with an array of different traumas. And so it wasn't unfamiliar to me, yet having been obviously explained more of the story, but it was a completely different thing being on the inside of walking through this experience myself and not knowing what was what. I didn't know what was happening to me, if that makes sense. I knew I was in total dissociative trauma, but it really helped me to hear someone else's words and someone else's experience. And so when I was listening to her book, it was just really helpful to me to go, oh, that's a thing. She said that she was snapping at her family and her boyfriend and she was irritable and agitated. And I needed those reminders. I knew that that was a symptom of trauma, but hearing someone else say, I was doing this or this was happening for me, it was, oh yeah, okay. And so after I listened to her book, I then started reading other books, more science and research based. And I realized that those were really helpful too. I realized I really wanted more stories. I started blindly searching for podcasts and I found yours. It was truly exactly what I needed. And it might even make me emotional saying it. Dave, your podcast truly helped me so much. Thank you. Hearing other people tell their stories, it put words and put language to so much that I didn't understand that I was going through. I did not expect to get emotional about this, but it really has been a really huge part of my healing. So thank you. And not just about what happened to me in this most recent, most horrific assault, but I listened to a few episodes and then I just went back to the beginning and I started listening to all of them instead of trying to figure out should I listen to this based on the title. I just was like I'm just going to start listening to them. And as I did that, there was a lot of ones that I probably wouldn't have clicked on thinking that I my story would relate to theirs. And as I did, there were certain things that people told stories again, their stories being totally different, but certain things that they explained about their experiences that it helped me understand so many other things that happened in my past. I never previously would have acknowledged or clocked as harm or rape or abuse of any kind until this really extreme thing happened to me, and then I was putting pieces together of all these other things and hearing other people talk about stories that I didn't relate to with this more recent experience, but with partners past, not even boyfriends or relationships, but just all kinds of experiences. It was hard, I won't lie. It was really confronting to then go, "Oh, so that would also be rape? Oh, fuck. How have I been so," I mean, I guess, yeah, anyway. It's like the ways that we cope. So anyway, your podcast has been truly a huge part of my healing, and all the stories, all the people. Thank you. It has absolutely been massive for me. So
Yeah.
that's why I reached
And
out. But there are certain aspects to my story that I feel like are things that I wish I knew. I wish I understood. Part of what happened for me is I went into a trauma bond with the perpetrator, and it was so extreme. But then, as I began my healing, I started to have to look back at what were the elements, what were the things that led me to a place, what has happened in my past, or what were my patterns, my beliefs, my previous experiences that could lead me to a place where I could be covered head to toe in bruises and not recognize it as harm, and then go closer to this person and trauma bond with this person. And I had to really face all these other past experiences and recognize the trauma bonds that I had, a lot of other trauma bonds, specifically one really big trauma bond in my past that was so much more subtle. I didn't know it until this more extreme experience. I can see the light in having this really horrific experience shine a light on these other things that I didn't recognize. And I believe that the more I've researched, I've heard, I've read, or maybe I've heard you say this, fawning is one of the most common trauma responses that we can have. I know freeze is most common when it comes to actual sexual assault or rape, but fawning is so common in relationships and in abusive relationships. And trauma bonding falls under the category of the fawn trauma response. And I realize how much I fawn in my life, not just in relationships, not just with men, all the things that could lead me to that. And the tricky thing is that fawning is so hard to know when you're in it. It's so hard to tell that we're doing it. And I just feel that we really do need to be talking about it a lot more, because I think a lot of people don't know that they're in really dysfunctional relationships on both sides. I think a lot of people don't know that they're being harmful, and a lot of people also then don't know that they're being harmed. And I'd really like to do what I can to help stop the cycles of abuse.
one of the things I want to point out right off the bat is that what you're doing takes a tremendous amount of courage, a tremendous amount of strength. That needs to be credited to your cognitive awareness here now, as you and I are sitting here talking, and you're going back in your thought process to, I was in this situation, I was in that situation, I experienced this, I experienced that. Now I understand more. When we're in those situations, as you said, is very difficult to recognize and understand and comprehend, because that's not where our minds are at those moments. We're not trying to
Mhm.
evaluate and process and analyze, am I doing what's right? Am I doing what's wrong? We're just living. We're just going through the processes of interpersonal relationships and communication. What I think you've pointed out very distinctly is that these situations, relationships in general, are extremely layered, extremely complex, and extremely difficult to maneuver. A lot of that has to do with just the fact that it's not common for people to be educated in psychology, in human responses, in relationships. That's not how we're raised. We're brought
Yeah.
up to take care of other people, sometimes before ourselves. But
Mhm.
the important aspect in what I think we're talking about here is to understand that the number one job or response of the human brain is to survive. That's what we are designed to do. First and
Hmm.
foremost is to survive.
Yeah.
We often are vulnerable in that respect without even acknowledging it or understanding it or comprehending it. Because more than anything, what our brains do is to try to survive in all circumstances. And so that gets very complicated, as I said, very layered. And the dynamics of all of that are difficult to understand, even for people who study this stuff day in and day out. It's very difficult. What I'd like to do, though, before we go too much further, if you're able, tell us about your experience. What are you able to talk to us about with regard to your rape and sexual assaults?
I'm going to just start at the beginning, but I think it'd be helpful to hear a little backstory context. I have two children with the same man. We were together for 14 years. And in September of 2024, we began the process of separating. A lot of things occurred in that time. We ended up not really officially being sure that we were complete until maybe January of 2025. We told our kids in April, we stayed under the same roof. So it was a very slow process. I know that it often is, but we stayed under the same roof for some time. And then I had been looking for new places to live. And very unexpectedly and not planned, I stumbled upon this place that was available in Mexico. He and I are travelers. He and I met traveling in Southeast Asia. I got pregnant a month later with our daughter. That's a story for another day. We both have a love of traveling. And so I stumbled on this place in Mexico, and there was this very clear guidance. You need to go. You need to do this. And I was just kind of, this makes no logical sense. But I brought it to him. He said, absolutely, go. Great. And that started this adventure. We're slow travelers, so we'll go and we'll leave Maui for many months, the better part of a year. We've done this before many times. It was this place in Tulum, Mexico that started it all. I ended up going there. He had the kids for a bit. The kids joined me. Then he ended up coming to join us for our travels as well. We were co parenting and traveling as a family. A little unusual, a little unorthodox, but it was good for us in many ways. So he came and met us in Tulum, and we all traveled to Oaxaca, Mexico together. Again, like I said, we slow travel, so we spend multiple months in one place. We got to Oaxaca, Mexico. We wanted to be there for Dia de Muertos because everyone says it's the best place to be for Dia de Muertos. And so that was what inspired us to go there and ended up spending a few months living there. In the time that we were in Oaxaca, we lived in a really cute little house that was just outside of Oaxaca Centro. So it was just a short walk. One of the first days of being there, my kid's dad and my son stumbled on this restaurant that these two brothers owned, and their tacos were delicious. That started this relationship with these brothers. Their food was really good. And so we would go there often. Their restaurant was on our way into town. So it was one of a couple of routes that we would walk. It was a very walkable city. So we walked everywhere there. Even if we weren't eating at their restaurant, we were walking by their restaurant frequently. We built a friendship with these two brothers because we'd be walking by, we'd eat there often. I think the first time I saw one of the brothers outside of the restaurant, I was going to go salsa dancing with a friend, and I ran into him at this restaurant bar. He's like, "Hey, I know you." Like I'd met him once. So we started hanging out with them outside of the restaurant as well. One of the nights of Dia de Muertos, it's like multiple day festival of nonstop. I think it was the second night of Dia de Muertos. We ran into the brothers, and my ex, the father of my kids, and we ended up staying up until the sun came up talking with the perpetrator. We were all hanging out, being friends. I remember that night he was asking a million questions. The conversation was very one sided. I just figured We are a very unorthodox situation here. What do you mean we're traveling with our two kids, but we're not a couple? We're just co-parents, and people were confused by that, and understandably so. And so he was asking a lot of questions. Every time I tried to turn the conversation to questions about him, he would flip it right back to information about us. Again, I just assumed it was because it was weird. It was people were curious. It was a very one-sided conversation, and I just assumed it was because we were just unusual story and people are fascinated by it. It was a fun night. We all had a great time. Fast forward, we continue to be friends with these guys, see them regularly, hang out with them. I could sense, I could feel that from both of the brothers, there was a bit of a flirtation or attraction to me, but it was always respectful and I could feel a vibe from them, but I didn't entertain any of that. I wasn't interested in either of them. I would say the other brother was a little more, he kind of showed interest, but I wasn't going there. I could sense it, but I was not reciprocating that to either of them. It was still very respectful. I didn't feel a weird vibe from them, and they were respectful around my ex and all the things. There was no warning signs. They were very interested and engaged with my kids. My kids were in a school program there. We'd walk by after school and what are you doing? Where are you going? How was school? What's happening? So they became like a cool uncle to the kids, even. The father of my kids had left to Guatemala. He was volunteering building wheelchairs in Guatemala for a couple of weeks. It was just my kids and I. He knew that he was gone. There was one night, the kids and I had been at one of their schoolmates' houses. All the kids and all the parents were hanging out. It had been a long day, long, fun day. We had hung at their house and then we needed to go get dinner, get home, and it was getting late. So we made our way back, and my son really wanted, he called it the brothers tacos. And so we go to the brothers tacos. It was towards the end of their evening. I want to say it was probably around 9 o'clock, and they close usually about 10. Maybe it was like 9:30. They were wrapping things up. We get tacos. Something that's very much a part of the culture in Oaxaca is mezcal, which is a spirit that people drink there. It is very common to share mezcal with friends, and they didn't serve mezcal at their restaurant, but they would share it with their friends. And so usually towards the end of the night, they might have a drink themselves at the end of their work day. There had been previous times that we had been there, they had offered mezcal to me. And so the other brother had said, Hannah, would you like a mezcal? And I said, sure, sounds great. Again, they had offered it to me before. I had accepted mezcal from them at least a few times in the past. I trusted them, and there was nothing ever to be concerned about for me with them. My son is having his food, and I'm having mezcal with them. They're wrapping up, and I'm talking story with the brother. It was nice to just have adult conversation. I had been full on with my kids. My kids were ready to go home. They were tired, and they were like, Mom, can we go? And I said, yeah, let me just finish my mezcal and then we can go. And they kind of were pressing me. No, Mom, we just want to go. Can we walk home and we'll meet you at home? I, at the time, felt like, okay, that's fine. We lived close by. It was a close walk. I felt comfortable and safe. Like I said, my kids are 14 and 11. They're pretty self-sufficient, and they wanted to get home and start showering, and I was going to meet them at home. So I said yes. They walked home. They texted me, we're home. They were fine. I was continuing to chat with both the brothers, and they had one or two other friends there as well, and they had shut the doors of the restaurant, and it was just friends hanging out. They were going to go around the corner. One of their friends' bands was playing music, and they said, Hannah, come with us. We're going to see our friend's band play. I had a meeting at 6 a.m. the next morning, and so I had no intention of staying out late. I needed to get to sleep early. My kid's dad and I had a meeting with potential international school for our kids, and we were dealing with multiple time zones. He was in Southeast Asia, and so it was just a super early Sunday morning meeting that we had scheduled. That being the one reason. And the second was that it was the first day of my period. And any female knows that typically day one of your period is the heaviest. I had already had a pretty demanding day of myself, walking all over the city and being with friends. When I can, I like to just take it easy on day one of my period because I do like to tend to my body. And this day I knew I wasn't really going to be able to do that. So I was already kind of tired. The idea of having some adult time sounded kind of nice. So I had my mezcal with them, was talking story. They invited me to go to see their friend's band. I kind of was like waffling. I don't know, maybe. I texted the kids. They're like, we're fine. We're showering. We're good. And I said, okay, I'm going to go for one song, one drink, then I'll go home. I want to keep it an early night. We walk around the corner. We go to this other bar where the band was playing. The same brother, which is not the one that assaulted me, said again, he was the same one that offered me in the restaurant. And he said, Hannah, would you like mezcal? I said, sure, I'll have one mezcal. He goes to the bar, he comes back with mezcal. I didn't think twice about it because again, I had received drinks from him before. There was no second thought about it. I didn't even make it all the way inside. There was like this outdoor terrace, and then there's like the front entrance, and then this big indoor outdoor terrace, the inside of the bar. I didn't even walk all the way inside where the band was playing. I just was right at the edge. As soon as we got there, I ran into this couple that I knew, and I started talking story with them. He had come back with the mezcal, and there's two memories I have in the bar, and I don't know what came first. The last two things that I remember, one was I was walking down the steps, halfway down the steps, and I don't remember anything else. And then I believe that that was maybe just a little blip of memory that I had because I'm pretty sure the last memory that and this, I believe that this came first, was standing talking with that couple. I was talking with the other brother, the couple, and then the perpetrator was right behind us talking to someone else. And I remember noticing that he was standing right over there. I was talking with the other three, and then I don't remember anything. The next thing that I remember was waking up. I was on my side, and there was someone behind me. He was already inside of me. So I woke up actually to the sensation of pleasure because biologically I was being penetrated. So my body was experiencing pleasure. My thought was, oh, I like morning sex. Really hazy and really confused. My senses were coming online slowly and very hazily. I'm waking up, being penetrated. I'm experiencing pleasure, but where am I? And I remember looking and going, this is not from like, where am I? And then I heard maybe a grunt or a sound, like something of his voice, and it was familiar. And maybe his smell. I think I realized who it was through just hearing his voice and smelling him. Pretty soon after that, I think it was like a couple moments later, his alarm started going off. And so he shot up out of bed and went to turn off the alarm. And as he did that, I adjusted to my back. And as I did that, I looked to my side on the bed. The bed had no sheet on it. It was a sheetless mattress. I looked and I saw blood, and then I looked all the way back and I saw this entire mattress was covered in blood. It looked like a crime scene. I was horrified because I just went into what the fuck is wrong with you, Hannah? How could you have sex with someone on day one of your period? What were you thinking? I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed and I was ashamed. Oh my gosh. I mean, I've had period sex with partners, but it's not necessarily like hook up with somebody that I want to. And usually you put something down, all the things. I went to embarrassment. I was ashamed. And so he jumped up, turned off his alarm, came right back. And I was on my back on the bed and he was standing up. And he entered me again and started going at it again. And I instantly was like, wait, we need to put something down. He just said, Hannah, it's fine. And then he continued. No way. I was like lifting my hips up off the bed. And I was like, wait, we need to put something down. Like, it is a mess right here. And he more firmly and in a reassuring voice, Hannah, it's fine. And he just continued. I was very distracted because I just felt really embarrassed. And not many moments go by, and I'm realizing, oh shit, what time is it? I'm realizing what day it is. What time is it? Where am I? What's happening? I'm not with my kids. All the things start to process because I was still really confused and hazy about what was going on. I think I asked him what time it was, and I freaked out. I went into sheer panic because I had that meeting. When I first woke up, I saw light filtering in through the windows. Then, oh, it's 7 in the morning. You're not home with your kids. And I was sheer panic. I've never once let my kids done anything even remotely close to that. So I just was shame, panic. I was horrified. And then my phone starts blowing up, and it's my kid's dad. And he's wondering, where are you? Because we had a meeting an hour and 15 minutes ago. He's calling nonstop. And I knew I couldn't answer the phone because can't say that I'm at one of the brothers' houses having sex with this man. That would really not go over well with my ex. So I just thought I need to get home as fast as I can. The kids are going to still be asleep because it was a late night. I could get home in time. And so I'm panicking. I'm freaking out. I was like, I need to get home. And so I'm in this unfamiliar apartment. Nothing about it is familiar. I do not remember coming into this apartment. I don't remember anything. I don't know where my clothes are. I think I went to the toilet and was just need to find my clothes, need to get home as soon as I can. So I'm rushing to put clothes on. And he says, Hannah, give me 5 minutes. I'll get in the shower and then I can take you home. And I was, no, I'm going to walk. I got to go now. And he was, just give me 5 minutes. It's going to be quicker if I take you. You're far from your house. And I was like, where the fuck am I? The way that most cities in Mexico or like towns in Mexico is they have centro, which is the center of the city, and everything surrounds that. He lived on one side of Centro and I lived on the other, and his restaurant was on that same side of Centro. So I was all the way across town. It's still kind of a small city, but it would have taken me like 25, 30 minutes to walk. But I had no idea where I was. I was completely lost. I was like, what do you mean it's going to take me so long to get? And he's just, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to just rinse off and then we'll go and I'll take you. And I was, okay. I'm trying to find my clothes. I find my pants in the living room on my heavy days. If I'm out and about, even if I'm not, I bleed quite a bit. And so I usually use, they're called flex discs. They're like bendable discs that you put up to catch the blood. And then on a heavy day, I need to back it up with a pad as well because I was out and about in the city. Because I had been out and about, I think I had like a super pad as well. My pants were sprawled out on the living room floor with my underwear inside out and this huge pad fully saturated in blood. Again, embarrassment, shame. I hope he didn't see this. That was my thought. I just felt, ugh, that's not the vibe you want on a first hookup date kind of thing. I just grabbed them, and it's so gross thinking about it now, but I like grabbed them, put them right back on as fast as I could because I just didn't want him to see. And my pants were covered in blood as well. So the blood had gone through my pants. And I put my pants on. I can't find my bra. I put my shirt on, and then I'm just sitting there waiting for him. And while I'm sitting waiting for him, my daughter starts calling me. And again, I just so much panic. The worst panic that I think I've ever had in my life because it's my kids. Again, I'm like, I can't answer this phone. I can't answer because if I answer, then I have to explain where I am and what I'm doing. The way that my brain processed it in that moment was, you got way too drunk and you decided to go hook up with this guy. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're a terrible fucking mother. You piece of shit. And I don't talk like that. I don't talk like that to myself, but that was where I went. Total self-blame and shame. My daughter and her dad are calling me nonstop. He and I get into the car. He takes me home. I can't get there fast enough. I get to my house and my daughter is not there. And I call her. She's understandably so angry because she's never, ever had to have that kind of fear or concern or worry that I wasn't going to be there in the morning. What had happened was that her dad was calling me, not getting through to me, feeling concerned. I didn't show up for this meeting that I had been reminding him of. He's like out of character that I wouldn't show up for this meeting. So then he starts calling her. And so he wakes her up. She wakes up, sees that I'm not there. She looks at my location and she sees that I'm on the other side of town. She had a device that could be used with Wi Fi, and that was it. So there was no cell service. And so she saw that my location was all the way across the city. She starts walking in her pajamas across the city to find me. The Wi-Fi obviously doesn't have Wi-Fi, so she's not seeing my real-time location. What had happened was that she walked across the city. I was being driven back, and a lot of these are one-way streets, so we didn't pass each other. I get home. She doesn't see it. She later I learned that she had stopped at some place first. She had screenshotted where I was and then just followed that direction. She's trying to get directions and support, and she walks into this place and she's really scared and creeped out. There's creepy men drinking at 7 in the morning and just making her feel really uncomfortable. And so then she leaves and she goes to another place. She lands at a coffee shop that really was around the corner from his place. And so she got her way pretty close to where I was. She had gotten Wi Fi. I call her. She's so mad, of course. Mom, where were you? Where are you? What is happening? Again, I don't lie to my kids, but I was so disoriented and I was, what do you mean? I'm home. Obviously knows that I wasn't home. And she's, I'm on the other side of town. I came to find you. And I tried to just play it off like that's not what happened. I was home all along. I didn't even know what had happened. And so I was just trying to save face and not freak out my kid. And I don't lie to my kids, but in this instance, I totally did. Yeah, not even able to make sense of what was happening. She stayed put, and I then walked immediately straight to her, picked her up. She was so livid with me. We get home. She doesn't talk. She has no words for me. She just says, I don't want to talk to you. Fair enough. Stays mad at me the whole day. I was not surprised. Her brother didn't wake up. He didn't have direct firsthand impact that she had. He slept through it all. So he woke up and he didn't know what had happened. I got home and she, I think, went back to bed, I want to say. I mean, again, I just thought I was tired from late night and whatever, but I was really hazy. I was super apathetic. I remember speaking with their dad later, maybe like a little bit after, and I did not give a shit that he was upset. I had no fucks to give. I was just like, where typically I would be like, oh, like he's going to be upset. Understandably so. I just was, oh, you're mad? Don't care. I cared that my daughter was upset and I cared that I was in shame and I was in guilt. I was upset that she had found out and that she was upset with me. But even that was so dulled. Typically, that would have debilitated. Being the cause of something like that to my children, I'd be really down on myself. I actually don't even know what I would like because I'd never, I mean, I'm a parent, I've definitely messed up before, but anything that impacts my kids, that affects me more than anything. So I felt some feeling about it as much as I possibly could, but I remember even in the moment clocking it as interesting that I didn't care as much as I typically would, that I felt this dullness and some level of indifference about it. The feeling of guilt and shame was dulled And the level of care that I would typically feel for being the cause of hurt to my children was significantly dulled. And I found that strange. But I just was, yeah, I was just in this, whatever. Yeah, you messed up. Here you are, kind of thing. I think I took a nap and I woke up later. I honestly don't really remember exactly the series of events. I don't know if I showered or when I really realized that I was in pain and that I was covered in bruises. It took a second, like because of the panic and because of my daughter and getting home, and I didn't even look at my body at first. I was so disassociated, I didn't realize that I was experiencing so much pain at first. When I did, it was pretty debilitating. I have a very high pain tolerance. I birthed two children at home without drugs. I have a high pain tolerance, and I was in a lot of pain. Both of my breasts were bruised, one big bruise on each of my breasts, all over my stomach, from above my belly button all the way down to my pubic line, my back, my butt, my inner thighs. I had bruises everywhere, and everything ached. It hurt to walk. Everything just ached and throbbed. I remember looking in the mirror multiple times for multiple days too, not just initially. I kept looking at my ear. It was specifically my left ear and my neck, but it was on both sides, but it was really intense. I felt my skin had been rubbed raw on my neck, and my ear felt like it had been hit. The cartilage hurt. I kept looking for a bruise or something visible because it hurt so bad. And I was like, how is there something that I need to cover up? There was no visible marks on my neck or my ear. He later said in a text, he said this to me. He knew that my neck would be hard to cover. He made sure not to leave marks in places that would be hard to cover. I was covered in bruises, in a ton of pain. My mind at the time, initially, just processed it as you drank too much, it's your fault, and it was just rough sex. And he just takes the cake for leaving the most evidence on your body. I've never had pain like that after sex, yet that seems like the most logical storyline for my brain to accept. The idea that I was drugged, the idea that I was raped by this person, the idea that it wasn't consensual, 100% impossible for my brain to believe or to process at first. I went on to continue to see this person for 3 weeks.
That does it for the first episode of a 3-part series here on Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Before I wrap up today's episode, I'd like to thank Hannah King for trusting me and all of you with the beginning of her story. As you've heard today, what happened to Hannah changed the course of her life. Yet, even through unimaginable pain, you can already hear something else emerging: courage. Not the kind that makes fear disappear, but the kind that chooses to keep moving forward. Hannah, thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and your trust. I know your story will help more people than either of us will ever know. To all my listeners, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with compassion and for standing with survivors. If today's episode touched you, please share it with someone else. You never know who may need to hear this story. As always, please do your part to help bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. One of the best ways to do this is to start by believing. Then keep the conversation going. Talk about these all too common crimes. Share this episode and help normalize the conversation so that together we can challenge the rape culture that continues to exist in our communities. Because we all know someone whose life has been impacted by rape or sexual assault. Please remember to join me next Tuesday for part 2 of Hannah's story. We'll see you next week.